What you were talking about of like the church isn't equipped to or making, mixed faith marriages feel good at church is like I went to the temple and then, through an endowment session, and this was at a time before they changed some of the verbiage, but I was realizing that I was like covenanting through my then atheist spouse. And I'm like, what is going on? This hurts like daggers. I don't want to be here. There were enough like points that, a big one, a hard part for me was the priesthood. We had another child after Ellie, and I actually wanted to bless him because I'm like seeing how like hard it was for Nick and just meeting with bishops. And I'm like, I feel mad that I have to outsource to my dad. Like I am so involved in these kids' lives. Why can't I'm fully capable of doing it, And so that desire grew even more, knowing that Nick was like tapped out of that role. And Nick tapping out, actually, like people would tell me, Nick could have been so great. It was all about this lost potential. Like I had people coming up to me all the time, like he could have been a powerhouse, and I would be so angry and sad. And I think partly because I felt those things too. I had my patriarchal blessing. I had put him in that role of like, he was going to be such an amazing dad and priesthood leader in the church. But I think I was also partly sad because I'm like, I don't think anybody would ever say that about me. Like if I left, and realizing how much Nick had and then lost, like we were at the same level. And I was realizing how much I didn't have because Nick had tapped out of his potential of priesthood. And I realized I want the priesthood. Like, why are we at the same status when I am trying so hard to make this work? And we show up and we're like equals, we're peers in the leadership power play of the church, and that was a huge, huge thing for me.
Yeah,
that was
that
really
I could have
big.
been a mission president. You could have been the wife of a mission president.
I mean, and I'm not trying to downplay like that. There are very influential women in the church, and I know that. But like just seeing it play out in our lives and in our family dynamic, and the church, like the patriarchy really, like that really rocked me, and I wouldn't have really exposed myself to that if he didn't leave. So I feel like there's all these experiences that I just could not have projected would happen, but seeing Nick leave, like that really changed my role and my relationship with the church.
Because it made you feel less, it shone a spotlight on the fact that your status was lesser. I want to make sure I understand.
Like my proximity to priesthood, which is the power and the currency in which you can have be the person in the room where the decisions are happening, was removed. Like Nick cut that. And so my proximity to that power, I wish it was more than the priesthood power. Like if we had currency outside of male and women roles in the church, like that would totally alleviate that burden. But right now the priesthood line is a huge connection to, I don't know, being in the room where important things are said and talked about and decisions are made. And Nick cut that, and I didn't realize the ramifications that would have on my role and my worship.
So if the church is run by the skeleton of patriarchy, with men having access to power and prestige and influence and status and decision-making, and then Nick gets cut off, then you're cut off as well.
Yeah, like our family.
For nothing that you did of your own, right?
Right. And so anyway, it sounds selfish to say that, or conceited, like I'm just out for power. But I think that just goes for anybody. Like I want to walk into a chapel and see women on the stand. Like I'm just realizing how many things that I thought were neutral were not neutral. It's not neutral to get, worthiness interviews. It's not neutral to see general conference and vast majority of them be men, male leaders. Like that's not neutral. And I started to be more aware and mindful of that. And it just got so heavy. And then with Nick cutting that cord, I was just like, and me wanting to bless our baby. And it just felt, I don't know.
Felt what?
All of those times that I had suppressed, like it's not that bad, like in ward council, there were some hurtful things that were done. And I felt like if only I had the priesthood, then maybe they would trust me more or put me in charge of something, or like I could.
Or your feedback would be considered more heavily.
Yes, yeah. Something. I would have more weight to my existence in the church. And Nick's leaving made that more tangible. And I just kept saying, maybe it's not that. And then having stepped away, like there aren't those comments. Like the comments are, what about your kids? Like, what about your children? And then again, it's like, it's my only power in the church. The line of a family tree. Am I just supposed to extend the family tree? Is that what my role was in the church? And it just felt like a slap in the face that I felt like all those times I wish that it wasn't true. And it's feeling like it is. So.
That basically, again, it's not about concern for you. It's about what about your children?
Yeah, like
again,
you're
that message about your body is, sex is for children, your body's for children, your worth is your children. And, you know, what about you?
Yeah.
As an individual?
Yeah. And that's, I don't know. And I feel like leaving, I know people are like, well, you can make the church a better, safer place. And I do still feel like, oh man, that would have been awesome to do that. But I don't want to expose Ellie and Will. Like that was the catalyst for me stepping away. I heard this quote from Glennon Doyle about the God memos we get as kids are carved in our hearts and they're hard as hell to buff out. And I'm like, I don't want to bring my kids to a chapel.
Again? Say that again.
The God memos we get as kids are carved into our hearts, and they are hard as hell to buff out. And hearing that quote, like that for me was like, I don't want to expose Ellie to the patriarchy, that walking into that chapel of just sitting there, you know, and just seeing all of the men, just the visibility of the patriarchy is so huge. Like just look at the pictures of all the general authority leaders and like it's undeniable. It's undeniable. And so that's for me, I was like, I just don't want to expose my kids to that. So that was the final, like after going to church, you know, by myself, or Nick would sometimes come and hang out in nursery with the kids. You know, we did that for a while. And I just said, but at what cost? Like, why?
Okay. How else are women being hurt?
Conversations around chastity and modesty, I think, are huge. And I think those are conversations that I'm seeing that are being changed and that are evolving, and which I think is a really good thing. Also work outside of the home and the whole stay-at-home mom and gender roles and the proclamation of the family. The proclamation of the family was also something that was huge in my my patriarchal blessing. It referenced it like 3 or 4 times, and that's a document that I read and studied at night going to sleep. And now I look at it and it's just like, so there's just...
What's wrong with the proclamation?
It's just so problematic on the gender roles, the fixed gender roles. Like women are feeling... I have so many friends who are feeling like I need something outside of motherhood. I need something that's fulfilling, but I would be disappointing that expectation that the most important job and work you can do is raising your kids. So that's definitely a conversation that I feel like could really change the topic of education and...
what about that?
Going to go to school and not as a venue to create an eternal family.
Yeah, to meet a guy. Yeah.
To be a good mom.
Yeah.
Study at elementary ed so that you can be a good mom.
And I'm seeing these pushes from the inside from members like women, and I think that's really important. So hopefully these conversations, I don't know, start to help. But it's hard because it seems like it's just pushing from the bottom up. So I would love to see more women involved. And and it's an interesting dynamic to see. Obviously, Nick left before me, and so I didn't get the opposite, where when the woman is the one who steps away before the husband, or maybe the husband won't. Like, there is a power dynamic that wasn't apparent in our relationship with the priesthood and being a leader in the home. And I know many women feel very dismissed by stepping away and trying to reclaim power, or, you know, things that they feel like they're missing.
Claim,
yes. Claim, that's true. So, and they feel very dismissed and like, that they aren't being heard and that their needs aren't valid. Because Nick leaving and stepping away, like, I feel like, and especially because he made more money than I do, or did at the time. And so I know that was something that I felt like him stepping away was a bigger hurt for the church than for me, you know, to step away.